Thank you. Okay, so first, unfortunately, I need to add a little correction because while I was introduced to you as a person from IBM today, and I know it's on the slide, but today I will not speak on behalf of IBM. I will speak of IBM, but these are all my personal views. So once we have that clear, first things first, what was not spoken about me just yet was why I was engaging in open source. And it's quite important for me, actually, because you can quite frequently hear that people are doing IT or software engineering because of some community events and stuff like that. And I was literally raised that way. So I have my dad to thank too, because he was actually a Polish translator of the GNU project. So today I want to share with you not what I've learned from somebody else, it's what I've been raised to do. So it's like first-hand knowledge, let's say. So let's start with what I will be talking about today. I know it looks like a lot, but it's really not. So first, maybe not everybody knows what is open source precisely and how it differs from free software, because it's not the same thing. Second, what kind of models of work do we have in open source? Then I will be talking about some rules regarding open source contributions and some examples of communities that were more or less successful. And at the end of it, the lessons that we've learned from all of it. So first thing first, what is open source? Open source is exactly how it sounds like. It's programs and software that have their source open, so it's available. Okay, so how does it differ from free or libre software? Contrary to a popular belief, free software doesn't need to be free as in you don't pay for it. It's free as in freedom. There are 4 freedoms of what you can do with free software. So one of the freedoms of those 4 freedoms is that you need to see the code. So how exactly does it differ from open source? Well, in fact, the difference is less about what it is and more about where it comes from. Well, free software comes from the GNU project, and it was supposed to be more of philosophy, more about people, how we interact with each other, how we share knowledge. And open source was like a decade later invention. And the reason for that was that open source, from the very beginning, was about business. Because it's really hard to sell something to the stakeholders when you say that everyone is free to do everything with your product, right? So the idea of Linus Torvalds and also other people, but the Linus Torvalds was the most famous one, let's say, was to sell the idea of open source to people in companies by saying that, it's not about philosophy and morals and whatnot, it's about work methodology. So you get free testers, free programmers, free everything, because people on the internet will do it for you. And those two actually also differ in work models. So the earliest model that was originally for free software was cathedral. Cathedral as in a big church, a thing that is monumental and very competent people work on that. It was version-based, and it was created by a fixed team of very competent people. So if you wanted to participate, you needed to get an invitation to the project. Also, the source code was available, but was only available in batches. Between versions, you didn't see how they made the version. You only saw the end result of a released version. But the open source, obviously, didn't do that, because if you did that, you couldn't get free participants on the internet, because they can't really participate if they don't see what happens right now in the project, right? So the open source initiative, which was in the 90s, was more iterative. So you can see the source code all the time. And what's more, because everyone can see and everyone can help, because everyone can say, oh, you get a bug in this line, or, well, it would be nice to have a feature in this, or I can see a problem with this code, or I don't like this code for whatever reason. Whenever that's free of flaws is up to a debate, I could make a whole other speech about flaws of the myth of meritocracy, because the bazaar is about assuming that the competent people will eventually find themselves in the project. You don't need to actively look for them. They will come naturally to you as they see your project and want to contribute, because competent people will want to contribute to your project. So there was this person, Eric Raymond, who noticed several problems with not only open source contributions, but software contributions in general. He was actually, one of his case studies was at IBM, which was one of the first companies to adopt open source as work methodology. He originally made 19 lessons, but I will today show you just a few and elaborate on them further on. So first, he said that good software starts by developers' personal itch, not by guessing what the customers wants. Seventh was listen to your customers, because they know what they want, you don't. 11th was recognizing good ideas from your users, which sounds like the same thing, but isn't, because that's how free software and open source differs, because your customer isn't necessarily your user. Your customer is who buys your product, your user is who uses that. So another company can buy your product and they are your customer, but the user will be someone that uses it, maybe their customers. So that's a separate thing. So as you can see, the Raymond had the business on his mind. And 12 was most innovative solutions come from realizing the concept was wrong. Because that's actually connecting the three first things. You have three sources of truth. So what is truth? Well, the truth is that maybe someone needs to be wrong sometimes, and oftentimes it will be you. So let's go to the case studies, because it's all quite abstract. So the first case study I want to show to you was an open source initiative that I've been participating in, actually very much in the spirit of free software. It was in the cathedral model, so we were having a closed team we assumed competent people, or rather, we assumed people willing to contribute, that we are actually gathering on a Facebook group. Okay, so why Facebook group, you might ask? Well, it's because we followed the first principle, which was we want an app built by people who will be using this app because they know what they want. And the app was Endo Helper, which was a mobile app dedicated to people suffering from endometriosis. Please raise your hands if you know what endometriosis is. Well, that's great. So each year I can see more and more hands when I present this, which I'm very happy about. Those of you who hasn't raised their hands, please visit the website of this foundation so that you can learn. Because it's an illness that 10% of women suffer from. So the chances that you have a colleague or or sister or mother or whoever in your life that will once in their life suffer this illness is very, very high. Okay, so what was wrong with EndoHelper? Well, let's start what was right about it. It was very, let's say, modern and bold and, dare to say, vanguard. We had great trainings for free. So those people that I told you that I wouldn't say we assume they're competent, we knew they are not. We knew they are people who want to start in IT, but they were eager to learn. We had professional software developers make these trainings. We had very modern, for that time, architecture that used Vue.js and PWA, if that speaks anything to you. So what was the problem? Why am I bringing it up as a problem? Because if you see the dates, it's like 2 months before Vue.js got the support, the built-in support for PWA. So basically, we wanted to do something that will be done by the contributors of the community 2 months from now. So we will be doing their work. We will double their work while knowing less about it. So our version will be worse, most probably, especially considering that we weren't that competent people. Like, we didn't create this framework, right? Their solution was obviously superior to ours. So that was one example of how not knowing and not listening to your community and not contributing to it can be problematic. So another example I want to show you is a case study of NIM programming language. And why I want to talk about it is because of Linus Torvalds. Because many of you may know that Linus Torvalds is known to be an extremely competent person. And he's known also for being an asshole. He used to be really rude to people, even to the point of actually sending them, they weren't threats, but they were stuff like, oh, you're so dumb, just go kill yourself because you're of no use. Stuff like that. So not a really nice person. And the author of this language was frequently compared to that guy. So let's have that in mind. And why I'm speaking that Linus Torvalds used to be this way, because recently, like 2 years ago maybe, Linus Torvalds said that, okay, I can see why it's problematic, I will try to work on myself, and he did. So good for him. NIM programming language. As you can see, its logo is a golden crown, and its slogan is efficient, expressive, elegant, which is like everything you want from a software programming language. So what was wrong with this one? Well, the person that I was speaking of, that was often compared to Linus, was Arak. His name was Andras. And here you can see a quote from myself talking to him about one of the features of the language, which was its garbage collector. Arak was more than convinced that the garbage collector is absolutely vital for the language. And may I remind you, the language's logo is a crown. That will be important later. That is absolutely important for the language. And if somebody doesn't agree to that, then they're just too dumb to understand his concept, basically. Well, this comment here isn't very rude, actually, because I didn't want to actually show you the rude ones. This one is civil, although it shows the main problem. Like, the arguments, not only mine, but other people's, were, made sense. But Arak's answer was basically, yeah, but my view is different, so sorry. Which is fine by itself. The problem is that Arak was the person responsible for the whole direction the language was going to, because he was called the benevolent dictator, like Linus. So, yeah, it's not a tyrannical one, but it is a simple person, the personal tastes and opinions of which affect the whole project. And everyone in this project needs to do what they told them. But the real problem here is not that he was a benevolent dictator. You know, you can do something that fits your taste. It's the rule number one, right? It comes from a personal itch. I want to make a language that I will find useful. But the problem was that when the stable version of the language was released, only a year later, Arak decided that garbage collector is a big problem after all, and we need to fix that. And right now, the general idea stays the same. Like Arak says one thing, and it's really key to the whole project. And then a year, maybe two later, he changes his mind. And why is that? It's because his opinion is the law here. But even a bigger problem is that the Zen of Nim, the document that says what are the values of this project, says that there should only be one language for everything, and therefore everyone. And this is this language. So therefore, when he says, okay, we don't agree, but I'm willing to do it that way, he's not really saying this is the thing that best works for me. He says that this is the best thing, and your thing is obviously worse than it. Because, once again, this language is supposed to be for everyone, for everything. And it was advertised like that. It wasn't advertised for any particular thing, not for web applications or command line or anything. It's just for everything, everyone. You just should switch to it because it's a superior language. So while we at languages, how can you, marketize your programming language better? Because obviously saying that your language is awesome isn't quite cutting it. Let's have a look at Rust. And there is a very particular reason why I want to concentrate on this language. So first of all, the crab is simply too cute not to paste it into the presentation, obviously. Other than that, the first thing is, let's have a look at the slogan. The slogan is similar, but a little different. It's a language empowering everyone to build reliable and efficient software. Okay, so it seems similar, right? It's elegant, reliable, efficient, all those positive traits. But when you have a look at the websites, they will differ, and the whole context of these slogans are very different. Also, you can notice that here we have the empowering aspect, which is frequently perceived in a different manner, because it's not about the creator knowing best, it's about empowering you. And it works, because this past year, Rust was among the most loved and desired, the 6th most desired programming language on Stack Overflow, and the most admired or loved. And a year before that, it was also the first one. And the year before that, and I think you know where I'm going with it. So, and the year before that, before that, and before that, yeah, and before that, Rust was created. So it couldn't be the most loved language in this year because it wasn't there yet. Okay, but why? I told you that we'll go back to the websites. This is Nim's website. So I think most of you know why it's not always the best idea to show a big chunks of code on a presentation. And that's what this website does. Exactly. Also, yes, it explains to you why it's efficient, expressive, and elegant, but it does so in a very stiff way. It's very up to the thing, okay? But the problem is that it's for people who don't need to be convinced, really. And this is the Rust website. So note that it focuses on an entire different thing. It doesn't show you any code. It tells you why and what can you do with it. So not everything is a good area to use this language. This language is for actually quite narrow sub-area of IT. It's not for, it's probably not a good idea to build a simple web application. Well, you can because you're using WebAssembly, but why? It's simpler to use other technologies for that. You do use Rust for web when you need performance, which is one of the whys. And this comes to our last example that sort of connects everything that I've showed you, which is once again the mentioning of IBM, the Watson Pipelines product, which is a product for orchestrating AI pipelines. So where you have AI development, it's all about how you create a model, train it, deploy it. Not necessarily in this order. But it's looped anyway. So, it's train it, deploy, train models, run models, then pick the best one, deploy it, repeat everything together on the next environment. So these are kind of the pipelines that help you automate all of that. So why this particular product? Because obviously it's from IBM, so I worked on this product, so that's why. But other than that, because it's a cross-community project with 3 different open source communities: Tekton, Kubeflow Pipelines, and Elira Toolkit. And believe it or not, you can see every single one of them when you use this product. Here is the product. So here are components from Kubeflow Pipelines. Here is Elira Canvas. You run it on Tekton, and the whole thing is powered by IBM Watson, which is the big guy in this equation. And this is very successful because people are used to stuff. Like Elira users are used to this canvas. They used it before, they know how to operate on it. People from Kubeflow Pipelines components, they know Kubeflow Pipelines components and they want to use them. Maybe they even have their own components that they already created and they want to reuse it in this pipeline. And the Tekton part is because Tekton is a native solution for Kubernetes. So it's if some particular product needed some very specific thing to be supported, they could easily implement that. So once again, other teams that used Tekton could feel at home and implemented their own solutions without extending our product, simply on Tekton, not touching the Watson pipelines itself. So the lessons learned, to summarize, is that you need to recognize good ideas from the users, but also from the community. Don't just focus on the users, because the community often knows best and knows their own solution best, better than you, and thought about it really thoroughly. The next rule I add is that to Vanguard isn't creating a very complex solution and combining stuff that you have little idea about. It's about actively contributing and driving the community, because the community knows best. So if you are driving community, it's you who know best. Or rather, you, plural, you, like you and others in this community, but you know these people. Next, don't try to be the jack of all trades and the king of everything, because you won't. There are 3 sources of truth: you as a developer, your customers, and your users. Well, maybe your community if you want it as a separate point, but they are not omniscient. They will make mistakes. It will be you, it will be the user, it will be the community, and therefore you can't make a perfect product, because everything is about who wants what. So no easy solution to that. We need to have separate tools, separate products for stuff. And the last one is that innovation is very important. It's like the silver, very precious metal. But the familiarity is gold, because it's even more precious. If somebody knows your product before even seeing it, well, that's golden. So if you want to drive the innovation, I suggest you to first drive your community, because that's how you drive innovation. Thank you.